My name is Detective Pierce. Detective, 23 years in service. I've seen my share of strange things, murders that made no sense, people who vanished into thin air, cases that felt off. But this one was different from the start. It began with a letter. No sender. No seal. Just a single line, written in precise, almost surgical handwriting. Point 47. She's waiting. That was it. No address, no context. Just the name of a place that, as far as I could tell, didn't exist. Still, something about that note bothered me. The paper was warm when I touched it, like someone had been holding it right before it reached my desk. It smelled faintly of dust and motor oil, like the inside of an envelope that had been on the road a long, long time. So I checked the archives. Point 47 wasn't listed in any database, not in the city plans, not in federal maps, not even in the decommissioned route logs we keep from before the war. Just nothing. A blank spot in the middle of nowhere. That should have been the end of it. But the message had that kind of pull that detectives can't resist. And lately, the cases crossing my desk had started bleeding into one another, names repeating, patterns overlapping. Somewhere in the mess, a voice kept whispering that all of this was connected. And maybe this point 47, was the key. I left the city before dawn, following a stretch of road that didn't seem to belong to any map. For hours there was nothing, no traffic, no power lines, not even a signpost. Just the hum of the engine and the sky hanging low like lead. By the time the sun broke through the haze, I'd reached the flatlands. The kind of place where even silence feels heavier. And that's when I noticed the compass. It was twitching. The needle didn't point north anymore. It spun, slow and lazy, like it was drunk. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped, pointing directly at me. The coordinates, if you could call them that, led me to an open field of dead grass. The ground was dry, gray, almost metallic. At first, I thought it was ash. But when I crouched down and brushed it with my fingers, I realized it was stone. Poured. Flat. Artificial. No cracks, no pattern, just a cold, perfect surface stretching as far as the eye could see. And then I heard it. A faint hum. Low, rhythmic. Almost mechanical. I pressed my ear to the ground. It wasn't machinery. It was slower, organic. Like something huge was breathing below the surface. I took a few steps back and looked around. The landscape was featureless. No trees, no fences, no horizon. Just the pale reflection of the sky on that strange surface. And for a second, I could have sworn I saw it move. Not a lot, just a subtle ripple, as if the ground was exhaling. My pulse spiked. I dropped a small stone to mark the spot and turned back toward the car. Only it wasn't there. The road, the dust, the tire tracks, gone. The whole field looked exactly the same in every direction. It was like standing inside a sphere of empty air. That's when I heard the voice. Soft. Male. Right beside me. You found it. I turned, flashlight up, but there was no one. You found it, it said again. Now leave. The air trembled with those words. It was an echo. It was vibration, deep enough to make my teeth ache. And beneath my boots the stone pulsed once, like a heartbeat. I looked down. The ground had changed again. Tiny waves moving across its surface, forming shapes. Letters. For a moment, they were clear, carved out by shadow and light. Point 47. Then they faded. Swallowed by the surface, like something alive closing its mouth. The hum grew louder. Steady. Cold. And as I stood there, frozen, the compass in my pocket began to shake. When I pulled it out, The needle wasn't spinning anymore. It was pointing straight down, into the ground. I took one last look around that empty plain. No sky. No road. Only gray dust and a feeling that I wasn't supposed to be there. When I opened my notebook, I saw new words scrawled beneath my notes. Not mine. Point 47, you are here. And for the first time in my life, I believed the map. When I finally started walking again, I didn't pick a direction. There was no point. Every side of that field looked the same, flat, gray, breathless. Even the sun had disappeared behind a smear of white sky, neither day nor night, just absence. I walked until the silence started to hum in my ears. That kind of silence that tricks your brain into making sounds that aren't there, faint ringing, distant voices, your own pulse. Then, somewhere behind me, I heard gravel crunch. I turned fast. No one. Only my own footprints, except they didn't line up right. The last few steps, they curved slightly to the left, while I'd been walking straight. After another hour, I noticed something on the ground, a small glint. It was a key, half buried in the ash-colored soil. Old brass, worn smooth, with a paper tag tied to it. On the tag, in the same precise handwriting as the letter, were 3 words. Do not unlock. The rational part of me wanted to laugh. What lock? There wasn't even a door in sight. But the longer I held that key, the heavier it felt, like it wanted to be used. Like it already knew the door. I pocketed it. After a while, I started to notice shapes on the horizon. At first, I thought they were mirages, trick of light, exhaustion, something my mind was projecting. But as I got closer, they solidified into structures. Towers. Dozens of them. Thin, metallic, like skeletal radio masts. Each one humming faintly with that same low tone I'd heard before. It was like they were resonating with the ground, breathing in sync. And at the center of the field stood a single, black tower. Taller than the rest. Perfectly smooth. No windows, no seams. That's when the air shifted. Not wind, pressure. As if the world itself had inhaled and was holding its breath. The hum changed pitch, deeper now, vibrating through my bones. My flashlight began to flicker. And for the first time, I saw movement near the base of the central tower. Something was stepping out of the gray dust. A figure. Human, or close enough to pass for one. Tall. Thin. Clothes torn, but not dirty, just faded, like they'd been exposed to too much light. It didn't walk so much as tilt forward, gliding over the surface. When it stopped, maybe 20 feet from me, it raised a hand. Not to threaten. To point. Right at my chest. You brought it, it said. Its voice wasn't a whisper this time, it was layered, like multiple recordings of the same voice played slightly out of sync. Every word left a faint echo, as if it was still being spoken somewhere else, miles below us. You brought it back. I wanted to speak, but my throat locked up. The air here was heavier than before, cold, thick, damp with static. When I finally forced the words out, they came out hoarse. Who are you? The figure tilted its head. And in that moment, I realized it wasn't looking at me. It was looking through me. You forgot, it said. You always forget. It turned, slowly, and began walking toward the black tower. Each step it took left faint ripples across the ground, like waves through oil. I followed, without deciding to. Some part of me needed to know. When we reached the base of the tower, the figure stopped beside a small, circular hatch. A single keyhole. My hand moved before my brain could stop it. The key slid in perfectly. The tag, "Do not unlock," brushed against my wrist as I turned it. The hum stopped. Silence. Then, a sound. A long, slow creak, like metal sighing under pressure. The hatch opened inward, releasing a burst of freezing air that smelled like iron and rain. Inside, there was only darkness. No walls, no machinery, just a black tunnel leading straight down. At the edge, engraved into the metal, were 3 words carved so deep they shimmered in the faint light. Point 47, Origin. The figure stepped inside without hesitation and began to descend, vanishing into the dark. For a second, I considered leaving. Turning back. Pretending none of this was real. But when I looked over my shoulder, the field was gone. The towers. The horizon. Everything. Only the hatch remained, and the endless drop below. So I climbed down. One rung at a time. The metal ladder was slick with condensation, cold enough to sting through my gloves. After a few minutes, the light from above disappeared completely. All I had was the echo of my own breathing and the steady drip of water somewhere far below. Then, faintly, beneath the dripping, I heard it again, the heartbeat. Slow. Heavy. Alive. And through the dark, a voice whispered up from the depths. "Welcome back, detective." I don't know how long I was climbing. Minutes, hours, maybe longer. There was no sense of direction anymore, just the rhythm of my own breath echoing through the metal shaft. Every sound bounced back distorted, as if something below me was mimicking it half a second too late. Eventually, my boots hit solid ground. I turned on my flashlight, but the beam didn't reach far. The air here was thick, like fog, except it didn't move, it just hung there, like a curtain of ash. The floor wasn't stone anymore. It was glass. Or something like it. Through the faint light, I could see shapes shifting below my feet, slow, fluid, almost organic. Like veins. The passage ahead narrowed into a tunnel lined with steel ribs, curved inward like a throat. Every few steps, the flashlight flickered, and the hum from above began again, deeper now, slower, like the heartbeat had followed me down here. Then I saw the first markings. Not words, exactly, more like cartographic symbols scratched into the walls, circles intersecting with spirals, each one filled with numbers and short phrases in what looked like old surveyor shorthand. Some of the symbols matched the ones I'd seen in crime scene photos years ago. A string of cases that never connected, disappearances across several states, all with identical carvings left behind. I dismissed them back then as copycats or coincidence. But here they were again. Etched into the bones of this place. Further in, I found a door. It wasn't locked, just slightly ajar, light leaking through the gap, faint and blue. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The room beyond looked like a cross between a morgue and a laboratory. Steel tables. Glass tanks filled with murky fluid. Old projectors flickering against the far wall, displaying frames of film that didn't seem to have a beginning or an end. And on one of the tables, a map. Yellowed, cracked, stained with age. Across the top, in faded ink, the words, "Coordinates pending revision." I leaned closer. The layout was all wrong. Rivers where there should be roads, cities overlapping, coastlines folded into themselves. It wasn't a map of any single place. It was a map of everywhere, stitched together like a broken mirror. In the bottom corner, one name repeated over and over, scrawled, underlined, then crossed out. Pierce. The projector clicked. The film loop reset, only this time, the frame had changed. I wasn't seeing landscapes anymore. I was seeing faces. Dozens of them, projected onto the wall in cold blue light. Men, women, children, every one of them looking straight ahead, unmoving. Their eyes were open, but not focused. And between each face, There was a brief flash of a number. And then me? My own face. You never really expect to see yourself like that. Frozen. Expressionless. Lit by a color that doesn't belong in the natural world. Beneath the projection, a small reel-to-reel recorder started to spin on its own. Static at first, then a voice, my voice, reading something I didn't remember ever saying. Case File 47. Subject found repeating event cycle. Memory degradation increasing. Spatial consistency unstable. Termination unsuccessful. The tape clicked off. Silence. I backed away, my pulse racing. As I turned toward the exit, something caught the light, a reflection in the glass tanks. I moved closer, and what I saw made the air leave my lungs. Inside each tank was a copy of me. Some looked older, some younger, some wearing uniforms I hadn't seen in decades. All perfectly still. Floating in that pale blue fluid like they'd been archived, preserved versions of a man who'd walked this path before. And above every tank the same tag. Point 47, iteration. I stumbled back toward the tunnel, trying not to look. The hum had turned into a steady pulse now, rhythmic, insistent, almost like a countdown. When I reached the door, the figure from before was standing there again. Same torn coat. Same stillness. But its face was clearer now, too clear. Because it was mine. He looked at me with tired eyes, as though he'd been waiting centuries to finish this conversation. You shouldn't have opened it, he said softly. You were supposed to stop here. I couldn't answer. My throat was dry, my thoughts scattered. The other me stepped closer. They built this place to contain it, he said. Not to explore it. But you keep coming back. You keep finding yourself. He pressed a hand to my chest. Cold. Solid. And when he spoke again, his voice trembled like static tearing through metal. Leave before it resets again. But I didn't move. Something in the floor began to glow, faint lines tracing across the glass like veins filling with light. The hum built into a roar. The tanks cracked, one after another, spilling that blue liquid across the floor. The figures inside began to dissolve, not die, but erase, like their existence was being rewritten. The other me stepped backward into the spreading light, his expression calm. Almost relieved. Remember the key, he said. And don't bring it back next time. Then he was gone. Swallowed by the light. And the hum went silent. I looked down. The key in my pocket was gone. In its place was a folded piece of paper, the same paper as the first letter. When I opened it, there was only one line. Point 47, you left the door open. I started running. I don't know where to. Anywhere that wasn't here. The tunnels stretched endlessly in every direction, each turn identical to the last. Steel ribs, glass floors, faint blue light pulsing like veins beneath my feet. Every time I tried to retrace my steps, the path had changed. Angles reversed. Doors appeared where walls had been. It was like the place was rewriting itself behind me. I began to notice small things, subtle, but wrong. My flashlight was heavier. The scratches on the metal ladder from before were missing. Even my notebook, when I opened it, had different handwriting. Neater. Not mine. The deeper I went, the more I saw signs of someone else passing through. Boot prints. Blood smears. A trail of burned matches leading down another corridor. At first I thought it might have been the other version of me, the one I'd seen in the tanks. But then I noticed the ash. Fresh ash. Still warm. I followed it to a chamber I didn't recognize. Unlike the others, this one looked older, walls covered in soot, the air filled with the smell of ozone and decay. In the center stood a broken elevator cage, rusted and half collapsed. And painted across the far wall in wide, black letters, "Point 47 is not a place." I ran my hand along the wall. The paint was wet. That's when the lights began to dim. One by one, the pulses beneath the glass slowed, fading into darkness. The hum that had been constant since I arrived was gone, replaced by something else. A whispering. 1,000 voices, overlapping, murmuring in sync. They weren't words at first. Just a rhythm. But after a moment, I started to pick out fragments. Names. Dates. Numbers. Some of them I recognized, case numbers, victims, crime scenes. But some hadn't happened yet. Harper missing 2 days from now. August 19th, bridge collapse, cause undetermined. Pierce, failure to report. That last one made me freeze. Failure to report. That was the phrasing they used in the department for officers who disappeared. I pulled out my notebook again. Half the pages were blank, the other half filled with notes I didn't remember writing. The coordinates aren't directions, they're instructions. Don't cross point 47 more than once. Every return fractures another timeline. On the final page, a single phrase repeated over and over, carved deep into the paper. You left the door open. I turned, expecting something, a movement, a figure, anything. Instead, I saw the walls begin to change. They were breathing. Each metal panel flexing inward and out, in time with that low heartbeat I'd heard before. It wasn't an illusion. The air itself was pulsing. And with every beat, I felt my own chest sink to it, my pulse merging with the rhythm of this place. The elevator groaned once, the cables tightening. And before I could move, the cage shuddered to life, rising on its own. I stepped inside, flashlight in hand, and the doors slid shut. No buttons. No controls. Just motion. The walls outside blurred into streaks of light and shadow. And through the glass floor, I saw layers, dozens, maybe hundreds, stacked beneath each other like strata of a world built again and again. Each one slightly different. Each one holding me. Some alive. Some not. When the elevator stopped, it opened into a small observation room. A control panel filled one wall, covered in dust and flickering screens. The glass window in front of me looked out over something massive, a crater, or maybe a sphere. And at the center of it all was a structure, familiar and impossible. The tower. The same one from the surface. Only now, it was upside down, suspended in midair, its base connected to the heart of the crater by veins of pulsing light. There was no doubt anymore, this wasn't a location. It was a mechanism. A map of itself. A self-referencing system that folded space and memory until they were indistinguishable. Point 47 wasn't where things happened. It was where they were rewritten. The intercom on the wall crackled. A voice came through, faint, calm, tired. You shouldn't be here, Pierce. It was me again. Older. Rougher. Like someone who'd seen the end more than once. Every version of you makes it this far, the voice said. Some climb back up. Some keep going down. None of them leave. What is this? I asked. A long silence. A correction, he finally said. Someone tried to fix reality once. This was the result. Who? The intercom hissed. Then, my own voice again, whispering so softly I almost missed it. You. The monitors came alive, one by one, showing fragmented surveillance footage, different timelines overlapping. In one, I was walking through a city street. In another, sitting at my desk, reading the letter. In another, lying on the floor of my apartment, unmoving. Each feed flickered and bled into the next, until the images merged into one, a shape, made of every version of me that had ever existed, standing in that crater, reaching toward the suspended tower. And then everything went black. When the lights came back, I was standing outside again. The surface. The gray field. The empty horizon. The car was there, exactly where I'd left it. For a long time, I just stood there, waiting for something to move, to prove I hadn't lost my mind. But the air was still. The compass in my pocket, steady. North was north again. I got in the car and started the engine. The radio came to life, static at first, then a voice, faint but clear. Point 47 closed. Recalibration complete. And just before the static swallowed the signal, one last line came through. See you next cycle, detective. The road back to the city was longer than I remembered. The sky had turned the color of rust, clouds stretched thin like smoke trails, the sun burning low behind them. I hadn't seen another car in hours. Just the same stretch of cracked asphalt, running straight ahead into the haze. The compass on the dashboard didn't move. The needle pointed forward and stayed there, locked in place, as if it didn't trust where it came from either. I told myself I was done. That I'd close the file, throw away the letter, forget everything that happened. But the further I drove, the more I started to notice, things weren't lining up. The signs along the road had wrong names. The mile markers jumped backward. And when I passed the same gas station for the third time, same broken neon, same flickering, open, sign, I knew. I hadn't left point 47. It had followed me. When I reached the city limits, the skyline was different. Taller. Too clean. The buildings looked like copies of the ones I remembered, close enough to be familiar, but not quite right. Windows in the wrong places. Streetlights bending at odd angles. And the people. They didn't look at me. Not once. They moved with perfect rhythm, crossing streets, turning corners, entering doors, as if every step had already been rehearsed. I parked near my office, but when I reached the door, my name wasn't there anymore. The frosted glass still had the imprint of letters, but they'd been scraped off. Inside, everything was neat, organized, untouched. Someone had already taken my place. And on the desk, a single envelope. Unmarked. I tore it open. Inside, a folded map. Old. Worn. And across the top, in black ink, the words. Revised coordinates. The layout was familiar, the same endless plain, the same towers. But now, there were new lines drawn across the paper. Each one connecting to another, forming circles, loops, intersections. Like the map had started to draw itself. At the center, a single point circled in red. Next to it, one word. Home. My pulse quickened. I checked the coordinates in the corner. Not numbers, but words this time. Each one a location I knew, streets, landmarks, alleys. Every one of them right here, in the city. It wasn't a new map. It was this place. Point 47 had expanded. The city felt wrong now. Every sound echoed a second too long. Every shadow held still a moment too late. And somewhere beneath it all, the hum had returned, low, distant, vibrating up through the concrete. It was weaker, but it was there. Always there. I turned a corner and stopped dead. There, in the middle of the street, stood the black tower. Not tall this time, smaller, scaled down, but unmistakable. Smooth surface. No windows. No seams. Pedestrians passed it without looking, like it wasn't even there. At its base, a door. And beside it, a small brass plaque. Cartography Department, Point 47. I don't remember deciding to go in. I just did. Inside, the air was still and cold, lit by the faint flicker of fluorescent tubes. Rows of filing cabinets lined the walls, hundreds of them, stretching back farther than the building should have allowed. Each drawer labeled with coordinates. Each one humming faintly, like they were alive. I opened one. Inside, pages of reports. All mine. Same signature. Same handwriting. Case after case. Each one describing a different version of me finding the same place. Some ended abruptly. Some burned around the edges. Some still wet with ink. At the very end of the row, one drawer stood open already. The label read, Pierce and active. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Cycle 47, termination pending. Subject has achieved temporary reintegration. Await next signal. And beneath that, a photograph. Me, standing in front of the tower, holding the same map. I dropped the paper, stepped back, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps in the hall behind me. Slow, deliberate. Matching mine. I turned, but the corridor was empty. Then I saw it. The reflection in the glass of the filing cabinet. A figure, my silhouette, standing just over my shoulder. I turned again. Nothing. When I looked back at the reflection, it had moved closer. The shape of me, but the face wrong. Blurry. Half erased, as if someone had tried to redraw it from memory. And then it smiled. You brought it back, it said. Again. The hum grew louder, rattling the drawers, shaking the floor. The lights flared white, then died. Darkness swallowed the room. In that silence, I realized what it meant. There was no leaving. No breaking free. Each time I'd found point 47, it wasn't leading me back, it was resetting me. A new version. A new attempt. Each one closer to forgetting what the first had done. And somewhere above me, in another time, another version of this city, a detective named Nathaniel Pierce was opening a letter. Unmarked. Blank. Still warm. I picked up my notebook, the one that wasn't mine anymore, and wrote the last thing I could think to. Point 47 isn't a place. It's the moment you realize you've been here before. The hum stopped. Everything went still. And when I looked up again, the door was gone. Only the faint outline of a map remained, burned into the wall behind me. A single word glowing faintly at its center. Here.